London in the 1660s was a bustling metropolis, teeming with life and activity. The streets were filled with merchants, traders, and citizens going about their daily routines. The city was a hub of commerce and culture, drawing people from all over the country and beyond. It was a city on the rise, but it was also a city living on a knife's edge. The rapid growth brought with it a host of challenges, from overcrowding to sanitation issues. The infrastructure was struggling to keep up with the booming population. Imagine narrow, winding streets barely wide enough for a cart to pass. These labyrinthine alleys were often clogged with people, animals, and goods, making movement slow and cumbersome. Houses were built of wood and timber, their upper stories almost touching across the narrow alleys. This close proximity created a sense of community, but also posed significant risks. These houses were tinderboxes, just waiting for a spark. The wooden structures were highly flammable, and the dense arrangement meant that a fire in one house could easily spread to its neighbours. Adding to the danger, Londoners relied heavily on fire for their daily needs. Fireplaces were used for cooking, heating, and even lighting, making open flames a common sight in every household. Every bakery, every kitchen, every workshop had an open flame burning. These flames were essential for daily life, but also posed a constant threat. It was a necessary danger, but a danger nonetheless. The ever-present risk of fire was something that Londoners had to live with, a part of their everyday existence. Safety regulations were practically non-existent. There were no standardized building codes or fire safety measures in place, leaving the city vulnerable. Fire was a constant threat, and the city had already suffered several major fires in its long history. Each incident served as a grim reminder of the ever-present danger. In the summer of 1666, London was in the grip of a severe drought. The lack of rain had left the city parched, with dry conditions making the risk of fire even more acute. Weeks of hot, dry weather had turned the city into a tinderbox. The wooden buildings, already highly flammable, were now even more susceptible to catching fire. The wooden buildings were parched, and the River Thames, usually a source of water for firefighting, was at a low ebb. This made it difficult to combat any fires that might break out. It was only a matter of time before disaster struck. The city was a powder keg, and all it needed was a single spark to ignite a catastrophe. The Great Fire of London began in the early hours of Sunday, September 2nd, 1666. The fire started in a bakery on Pudding Lane, owned by Thomas Fariner, the King's baker. It is believed that a smouldering ember from the bakery's oven ignited nearby fuel, possibly firewood or coal. The fire quickly spread through the bakery and to the adjacent houses. People were woken by the smell of smoke and the sound of crackling flames. Many fled their homes with only the clothes on their backs, desperate to escape the inferno. The Lord Mayor of London, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, was informed of the fire, but he dismissed it as a minor incident. A woman might piss it out, he is said to have remarked. His complacency would have devastating consequences. Fanned by a strong easterly wind, the fire spread rapidly through the tightly packed streets of London. The wind acted like a bellows, intensifying the flames and making them leap higher and faster. The narrow streets and closely built wooden houses created a perfect storm for the fire to thrive. The flames leapt from house to house, fueled by the dry timber and flammable materials stored within. The wooden structures, combined with the tar and pitch used in construction, provided ample fuel for the inferno. It was as if the city itself was feeding the fire. The fire was soon out of control. Efforts to contain it were futile as the flames raged with a ferocity that defied human intervention. The night sky was illuminated by the relentless blaze, turning night into day. The fire raged for 4 days and nights, engulfing everything in its path. It showed no mercy, consuming everything from grand buildings to humble homes. The relentless advance of the fire left a trail of destruction in its wake. It consumed churches, homes, shops, and even reached the Tower of London. The city's landmarks, symbols of its history and culture, were not spared. The fire's reach was indiscriminate and all-encompassing. The heat was so intense that it melted lead on rooftops and cracked stone walls. The very fabric of the city was being undone by the sheer power of the flames. Buildings that had stood for centuries were reduced to rubble and ash. People fled for their lives, carrying what possessions they could, and seeking refuge in the open fields outside the city. The streets were filled with the desperate cries of those trying to escape the inferno. Families were torn apart in the chaos. The fire created its own weather system. The intense heat generated powerful updrafts, creating wind patterns that further spread the flames. The air was thick with smoke and ash, and the sky glowed an eerie orange. The sun was blotted out, casting the city in a perpetual twilight. Breathing became difficult as the smoke choked the air. The roar of the flames could be heard for miles around. It was a constant, terrifying reminder of the destruction that was unfolding. The sound was like a living beast, growling and consuming everything in its path. The fire was a terrifying spectacle, a force of nature unleashed upon the city. It was a disaster of unimaginable proportions, leaving an indelible mark on the history of London. The citizens of London fought bravely against the fire, but their efforts were hampered by a lack of organisation and resources. Buckets were passed from hand to form human chains, but the water supply was inadequate. The few fire engines available were primitive and ineffective. King Charles II, realising the gravity of the situation, took personal charge of the firefighting efforts. He ordered houses to be demolished in the path of the fire to create fire breaks. This drastic measure eventually helped to contain the blaze. Gunpowder was also used to blow up buildings and create fire breaks. This was a risky strategy, but it proved to be effective in slowing the fire's advance. However, it also contributed to the widespread destruction. One of the most vivid accounts of the Great Fire comes from the diary of Samuel Pepys, a naval administrator and member of Parliament. His detailed observations provide a unique window into the past, allowing us to experience the tragedy through his eyes. Pepys' diary entries provide a first-hand account of the fire's progress and its impact on the city. His meticulous notes capture the unfolding chaos and the human response to the disaster. On September 2nd, Pepys wrote, "Some of our maids sitting up late last night in the garden saw a fire and called us up. So I rose and went to the window, and it seemed great. The sight of the flames in the distance was both mesmerizing and terrifying." Pepys then went back to sleep, only to be woken later by the sound of the fire bells. The relentless ringing signaled the growing danger and urgency of the situation. Pepys' diary entries capture the fear, confusion, and despair that gripped London during the fire. The city was engulfed in panic as people struggled to save their homes and loved ones. He describes fleeing his home with his possessions, a desperate attempt to salvage what little he could from the encroaching flames, burying his valuables in his garden, hoping to protect them from the fire's reach. This act of desperation highlights the dire circumstances faced by the city's residents, and witnessing the destruction of his beloved city. The Great Fire of London left an indelible mark on history, and Pepys's diary remains a poignant reminder of the human cost of this devastating event. The Great Fire of London was finally extinguished on September 5, 1666. The fire had destroyed an estimated 13,200 houses, 87 churches, and countless other buildings. Over 70,000 people, two-thirds of the city's population, were left homeless. Despite the immense devastation, Londoners showed remarkable resilience. Almost immediately, plans were made to rebuild the city. King Charles II appointed a commission to oversee the reconstruction effort. The rebuilding of London was a massive undertaking. It took years to clear the rubble and erect new buildings. The fire had created an opportunity to redesign the city, and several plans were put forward. One of the most influential figures in the rebuilding of London was Sir Christopher Wren, a renowned architect. Wren proposed a grand vision for a new London with wide streets, spacious squares, and elegant buildings. While his plan was not fully implemented, it had a significant impact on the city's development. Wren designed many of London's most iconic landmarks, including St. Paul's Cathedral. The Dome of St. Paul's, completed in 1710, became a symbol of the city's resilience and its rebirth. The Great Fire also led to improvements in building regulations. New laws were passed requiring buildings to be constructed of brick or stone, and wider streets were mandated to prevent the spread of future fires. In 1677, the monument to the Great Fire of London was completed. Standing 202 feet tall, The monument is located near the site where the fire started on Pudding Lane. It serves as a poignant reminder of the devastating fire and the city's remarkable recovery. The Great Fire of London was a tragedy that caused immense suffering. However, it also led to positive changes. The rebuilding of London created a healthier, safer, and more beautiful city. The fire also fostered a spirit of innovation and a determination to learn from the past. The monument stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of London and its people, a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity.